The forest was alive with strange sounds. The trees glowed faintly, their bark pulsing with veins of blue light. Birds with crystal wings darted between branches, their voices sharp like broken glass. Somewhere deeper, the ground trembled with heavy steps, as if something large was moving unseen. The little alien girl clutched her chest and tried to breathe quietly. Her skin shimmered green in the dim light, and her wide eyes glistened with fear. She whispered her sister's name, but no answer came. She had seen them take her. Dark figures, armored and tall, had swooped down from the cliffs above, dragging her older sister into the shadows. She had run after them, but her small legs could not match their speed. Now she stood alone in the strange forest, trembling and desperate. The little alien pressed her hands together, as if praying to the stars. And then she remembered the stories of the human who walked this world. He was not like the others, not like the traders who came for profit, or the soldiers who came for war. This one lived far from the cities, near the edge of the wilds. Some called him dangerous. Others whispered he was cursed. But all agreed on one thing: wherever he walked, no enemy dared to follow. The little alien girl knew she had no choice. If anyone could save her sister, it would be him. The journey was not easy. The roots of the glowing trees curled like snakes, catching her feet. Sharp thorns scraped her skin, leaving faint silver lines across her arms. Strange creatures hissed from the shadows, their eyes burning red. She fought back tears, pushing forward, whispering to herself that she must not stop. Every step carried the weight of her sister's fading cry, echoing in her memory. At last she reached the human's dwelling. It was not what she expected. No shining palace, no walls of steel. Just a rough shelter made from wood and stone, half covered in moss, standing quiet against the forest. Smoke curled lazily from a small fire. Weapons rested on racks outside, blades of metal, tools of war, strange objects she did not know the names of. And there he was, standing with his back to her, tall and broad, his figure outlined by the fading light. His hands moved with care as he sharpened a blade. The sound of steel against stone was steady, calm, unhurried. The little alien froze. She had imagined this moment, but now her voice stuck in her throat. What if he refused? What if the stories were lies? She clutched her trembling hands to her chest, fighting the fear that pressed against her ribs. Finally, she stepped forward, her small voice breaking the silence. "Mighty human," she whispered, her words shaking. He did not turn, but the blade paused in his hand. The girl's eyes filled with tears. "They took my sister. Will you help me?" The human raised his head slowly. His movements were not rushed, not startled, as if he had expected her all along. He set the blade down carefully on the wooden table. The silence between them stretched heavy, filled only by the crackle of the fire. When he finally turned, his eyes met hers. They were not like alien eyes, no glow, no shimmer, just steady and human. Yet in them was something deeper, something that made her knees tremble. A quiet strength. A promise of storms. He studied her for a moment, his gaze moving over her small frame, her bruises, her frightened hands. Then he spoke, his voice low and steady. "Who took her?" The girl gasped, her chest rising quickly. She stepped closer, desperate, as if afraid he would turn her away. "The ones from the cliffs," she said. "Dark armor, long blades. They carried her away. I tried to follow, but I couldn't. Please, she's all I have." Her words spilled out in a rush, every syllable carrying her fear. The human's jaw tightened. His hand closed around the blade again, not to sharpen it this time, but to test its edge. He slid it back into its sheath and reached for another weapon, a long staff of steel and wood, scarred from battles past. He did not ask why they had taken the sister, nor what danger lay ahead. He did not need to. The firelight caught his face as he lifted his pack from the ground. settling it across his shoulders with practiced ease. The girl felt her chest rise with hope. For the first time since her sister was taken, she did not feel alone. Without a word, the human stepped past her, his boots pressing into the damp earth. His presence filled the air like thunder rolling in the distance. The girl turned quickly and hurried to follow, her small steps rushing to keep up with his long stride. The forest seemed quieter now, the whispers fading, as if even the shadows waited. She clung to his side, her voice soft but steady. "You will help me, won't you?" she asked. He did not slow, did not look down. But the way his grip tightened on the weapon was answer enough. Asterisk. The forest grew darker as they moved. Deeper. The glowing trees seemed to lean away, their light fading with every step. The air was heavy, filled with the scent of damp earth and strange flowers that opened only at night. The little alien girl stayed close to the human, her small hands gripping the edge of his cloak. Every sound made her jump, but the human walked as if he feared nothing at all. His steps were silent, steady, like he had walked this path many times before. She wanted to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she studied him in silence. His shoulders were broad, his stride long, and every movement spoke of strength. Yet there was something else in him too, something quiet. He was not rushing, not shouting, not showing the panic that filled her chest. It was as if he carried a weight far heavier than her fears, and yet he bore it with ease. She wondered what stories hid behind his eyes, what battles he had already fought. Finally, her voice broke the silence. "Why are you helping me?" she asked softly. The human did not stop walking. His eyes stayed forward, fixed on the path ahead. "Because you asked," he said simply. The girl blinked, confused. "But you don't know me. You don't even know my sister." His hand tightened around the staff he carried. "It doesn't matter. They took her. That is enough." His voice was calm, but it carried a weight that made her believe him instantly. The ground trembled again, this time closer. The girl froze, pulling at the human's cloak. "They're coming," she whispered, her voice cracking. From the shadows ahead, shapes began to form, tall, armored figures with glowing red eyes. They moved like hunters, their blades glinting faintly in the dark. The girl's chest tightened. She recognized them. These were the same ones who had taken her sister. Her heart screamed at her to run, but her legs would not move. She looked at the human, waiting for him to step back. But he did not. Instead, he stepped forward. The shadows shifted around him as if the forest itself bent away. His voice was steady, low, carrying across the stillness. "You took something. That was not yours." The armored figures paused. For a moment, they seemed unsure. Then one of them hissed, raising its blade, and the others followed. The girl gasped, but before fear could swallow her, the human moved. His staff struck the ground with a sound like thunder. The nearest attacker fell, its armor dented, its body crashing into the dirt. The girl's eyes widened. She had never seen anything like it. The human's movements were fast, too fast for her eyes to follow. One moment he stood still, the next he was inside the enemy's guard, his weapon striking with precision. Each blow was final, each strike carrying the weight of years of practice. The armored figures tried to surround him, but it was like trying to trap a storm. He twisted, struck, and every time his staff moved, another enemy fell. The forest echoed with the clash of steel and the hiss of pain. The little alien trembled, not from fear, but from awe. The stories had not been lies. The human was mighty, more than she had imagined. Yet even in his fury, his movements were controlled, never wild. He fought not with anger, but with purpose. When the last figure fell to the ground, silence returned. The human lowered his staff, his chest rising. Steadily, his eyes scanning the trees for more threats. The girl stepped forward slowly, her small hands shaking. "Hugh, you're not like them," she whispered. He looked at her, his face unreadable. "No, I am not." She swallowed hard. They serve the ones who took my sister. They are scouts, hunters. If they are here, then she is not far." Her voice broke, and tears filled her eyes. The human knelt, lowering himself to her level. His eyes met hers, steady and calm. "Then we will find her," he said. The words were simple, but they wrapped around her heart like a shield. She nodded quickly, wiping her face with her hands. Her hope flickering back to life. They moved again, deeper into the forest. The path twisted, the air growing colder. Strange symbols marked the trees, carved deep into the bark. The girl shivered. She knew these marks. They belonged to the Dark Ones, the raiders who came from the cliffs. She remembered her sister's screams as they dragged her away, remembered the cruel laughter that followed. Her small hand tightened into a fist. For the first time, anger began to burn inside her. She looked at the human and whispered, "Promise me we'll bring her back." He did not answer, but his silence was louder than any oath. Hours passed. The moon rose above the forest, casting pale light between the branches. At last they saw it a camp, hidden in the hollow of the cliffs. Fires burned in a circle, and around them stood more armored figures. At the center, bound in chains, was her sister. The girl gasped, covering her mouth with trembling hands. Her sister's eyes were closed, her body weak, but she was alive. Relief and terror battled inside the little alien's chest. She turned to the human, her voice breaking. "There! Please, you have to save her." Her eyes shone with tears, but also with hope. The human's gaze fixed on the camp. His hand rested on his weapon. And for the first time, a faint smile touched his lips. The campfires crackled, throwing long shadows against the cliff walls. Armored figures moved around the circle, their eyes glowing red beneath heavy helmets. They spoke in harsh voices, their laughter sharp, like broken stone grinding together. At the center, the girl's sister knelt in chains, her head bowed, her body trembling with weakness. The sight stabbed the younger girl's heart, and tears welled in her eyes. She clutched the human's arm with both hands, whispering, "She's alive. Please, we must go now." The human crouched low, his eyes sweeping across the camp. He did not rush. Every detail mattered. The number of guards, the strength of their weapons, the layout of the fires. His gaze lingered on the chains binding. The older sister. They glowed faintly, runes carved deep into the metal. These were not ordinary bonds. They were meant to hold even the strongest captive. His jaw tightened, and he leaned closer to the little alien girl. "If we rush, we both die. If we wait, we might save her." His voice was steady, unshaken, though his hand gripped his staff with quiet force. The girl wanted to scream at him, to beg him to hurry, but something in his eyes stopped her. She swallowed her fear and nodded. The human silence was not cruelty. It was focus, like the calm before a storm. She pressed herself against the rocks, peering out as the raiders gathered near the fire. One of them raised a horn, its sound echoing through the night. More shadows appeared at the edge of the camp, reinforcements. The girl's stomach twisted. Time was running out. The human moved, quick and silent. He picked up a handful of dirt and pressed it between his hands, smearing it across his face and arms. The girl watched wide-eyed as he blended into the shadows, his figure melting into the night. He pointed to her, then to a safe hollow in the rocks. She understood. "Stay hidden. Wait." Her hands shook, but she obeyed, crawling into the hollow, her small form vanishing behind the stones. Her heart pounded as she pressed her hands over her mouth, watching him slip toward the camp. The raiders never saw him coming. He moved like a shadow, his steps silent, his body low. The first guard fell without a sound, the staff striking his throat before he could breathe. The second collapsed into the dirt, his blade never leaving its sheath. The girl covered her mouth tighter, her wide eyes shining as she watched the human cut through the camp's edge, silent and precise. For every guard that fell, the fires seemed to burn brighter, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. But silence could not last forever. One of the raiders turned just as the human struck, his armor scraping loudly against stone as he fell. The sound snapped the camp in two. Motion, shouts rose, weapons clashed, and the circle of fire came alive with chaos. The girl gasped, her hands clutching the rocks as she saw the human surrounded. Blades struck, sparks flying as steel met steel, yet he did not falter. His staff spun, his movements faster, sharper, every strike dropping another enemy. Still, more came. The raiders poured in from the shadows, their numbers growing like a flood. The girl's heart screamed. She wanted to run to him, but she was too small, too weak. Then her eyes fell on her sister. The older girl stirred, lifting her head slowly, her face pale and bruised. Their eyes met, and for a moment, hope burned between them. The younger sisters. Tears fell freely now. "Hold on," she whispered to herself. "He will save you." She pressed her hands together, her small voice trembling in prayer to stars that no longer answered. But still she prayed. The human fought like a storm unleashed. His blades shattered armor, his strikes left the ground shaking. But even he could not ignore the chains at the center of the camp. The runes glowed brighter as the raiders closed in, as if the chains themselves fed on the chaos. He saw it, the trap. They had left her alive not as mercy, but as bait. His eyes narrowed. He spun his staff, clearing a circle of space, his chest rising with steady breaths. For the first time he spoke loudly, his voice cutting through the camp like thunder. "I am coming for her," the raiders faltered. Some stepped back, their eyes narrowing behind red visors. They had fought many enemies before, but none like him. The firelight cast his shadow long against the cliffs, towering, unyielding. For a moment, even the strongest among them hesitated. The little alien girl's breath caught in her throat. She had never heard such a promise spoken with such power. Her fear melted into something new, something fierce. She rose from her hiding place, her small body trembling, but her voice clear. "She is my sister. You cannot have her." The raiders turned toward the sound, their attention breaking. It was enough. The human struck with renewed fury, his weapon moving in a blur. He cut through their defenses, driving straight toward the center. The girl's eyes locked on her sister, chained and waiting. For the first time since the night began, she felt the truth burn inside her. They would not fail. Not while he stood beside her. Not while hope still lived. The fire roared higher as if feeding on the chaos. Sparks leapt into the night sky, lighting the cliff walls with orange glow. The raiders shouted in their harsh language, their blades clashing as they tried to surround the human once more. But he pressed forward, every strike forcing them back. His staff cracked through helmets, shattered armor, and broke the rhythm of their attacks. Still, more came. The camp was a nest of them, and for every one that fell, two more stepped from the shadows. The little alien girl's heart raced as she crawled closer, her eyes fixed on her sister. The glowing runes on the chains pulsed like beating hearts, their light sickly and cold. Her sister stirred, weak, her lips parting to whisper something, but no sound came. The girl's tears blurred her vision. She wanted to run to her, but the memory of the human's steady eyes kept her still. If she rushed now, she would only be caught. She had to trust him. And yet, she could not just sit and do nothing. Human saw her, standing small but fierce against the firelight, and something in him hardened. He broke through the line of raiders, his weapon flashing. The nearest one fell, and another staggered back, leaving an opening. He stepped into the circle, standing between the chained sister and the enemy. For the first time, he placed his hand on the glowing bonds. The runes burned hot, hissing against his skin, but he did not pull away. His voice dropped low. These chains feed on fear. He gripped tighter, then let them feed on me. The runes flared bright, their light blinding. Pain surged through his arm, but he did not let go. His teeth clenched, and his body trembled as if the chains tried to drink the strength from his blood. The raiders roared, rushing forward to strike him while he was bound. But the little alien girl screamed, throwing herself into their path. She had no weapon, no strength, only her voice. "You cannot have her." She cried again, louder this time, her voice echoing across the cliffs. For a moment, even the raiders faltered at the sound of such defiance from one so small. That moment was enough. The human tore the staff upward, striking against the runes. Sparks burst, metal screeched, and the ground shook. The chains cracked but did not break. His hand bled, his knuckles raw, but he raised the staff again. The raiders charged, their blades flashing. The girl screamed, sure he would be cut down. But with a roar that seemed to shake the air itself, the human brought the staff down with such force that the runes shattered. The chains exploded in a shower of light, and the older sister collapsed free into his arms. The camp froze. The raiders staggered back, their glowing eyes dimming with shock. No one had ever broken those chains. Not with blade, not with fire, not with strength. Yet the human had. The little alien girl rushed forward, throwing herself beside her sister, clutching her with trembling arms. "I found you," she whispered, her tears falling onto her sister's pale skin. The older girl opened her eyes, weak but alive, and managed a faint smile. "You came." Her voice was faint as dust, but it was enough to send new strength through the younger sister's heart. The raiders' shock turned to rage. They roared as one, their blades rising. The human stood tall, placing himself between the sisters and the enemy. His chest rose steady, his weapon gleaming with firelight. He looked back at the girls only once, his voice calm. "Stay behind me." The little alien gripped her sister tightly, nodding, though fear burned her chest. She could not look away as the raiders rushed in, a wave of steel and shadows. And then the storm began. The human staff moved like a living thing. It struck, spun, cracked against armor. His fists followed, his body twisting with the precision of 100 battles. Every strike dropped an enemy, every movement flowed into the next. The raiders fought with fury, but he fought with something greater, not for glory, not for himself, but for them. The little alien watched, her eyes wide, her heart pounding with awe. She realized then that he was not fighting to survive. He was fighting so that they could. Still, the numbers pressed. Even the human could not stand forever. His breath grew heavier, his shoulders tense. One blade cut across his arm, blood dark against his skin. Another slammed into his side, knocking him to one knee. The girl screamed, her hands clutching her sister tighter. "No, please, you can't fall." The raiders closed in, their eyes burning brighter. The human gritted his teeth, his body trembling. And then, from deep inside him, something surged. A fire that no wound could smother. He rose again, his voice breaking the night. "I said, she is not yours." The staff whirled in a blur faster than before. Every strike shook the ground, every blow left the raiders staggering. The human became a storm once more, his fury unbroken, his will unbent. One by one, the raiders fell until silence returned. The fire still burned, but no enemy stood. Only the human, his chest heaving, his blood dripping onto the dirt. He leaned on his weapon, his eyes still sharp, his body still ready. The little alien stared at him with trembling lips. He was hurt, but still he stood, unbroken. She whispered softly, her voice filled with awe and fear. "Mighty human." The fire smoldered low, painting the ground with dull red light. Bodies of raiders lay scattered across the camp, their glowing eyes dimmed forever. The human stood, tall among them, his chest rising and falling, his staff dripping with blood and ash. His arms bore deep cuts, his side bled through the torn fabric, but his eyes remained sharp. Behind him, the two alien sisters clung to each other, their breaths shaky, their tears glistening in the light. For the first time, the younger girl felt her sister's warmth again, fragile but real. Relief filled her heart, but it did not last. A low horn sounded in the distance. Its cry echoed off the cliffs, carrying far across the forest. The little alien's blood ran cold. Reinforcements. She clutched her sister tighter, her eyes snapping to the human. He was already moving, pulling his weapon free from the dirt. "They will come again," he said, his voice calm though his body trembled. He turned to the sisters, his gaze steady. "We cannot stay here." His words carried no doubt. The girl nodded quickly, helping her weak sister to her feet. The human led them away from the fire, into the dark forest. The night was alive with distant roars. The raiders were not finished. Their camp was only one nest among many. The little alien stumbled as she half-carried her sister, but the human slowed his pace, letting them stay close. His steps were steady, each one sure, even though blood dripped down his arm. The girl noticed, her heart aching. "You're hurt," she whispered. He did not look at her. Not enough to stop. His words were like stone, unyielding, immovable. She pressed her lips tight and kept walking. Hours passed as they moved deeper into the wilderness. The forest gave way to jagged rocks and narrow paths. The moon shone faint above them, silver against the cliffs. The older sister grew weaker, her legs trembling. Finally, the human stopped, guiding them into a hidden cave. Inside, the air was cool, the walls damp. He set his staff aside and helped the sister sit against the stone. For the first time since the battle, silence surrounded them. But silence could not mask the truth. The human's wounds bled freely, his body swaying with exhaustion. The younger girl crawled forward, her hands shaking as she touched his arm. "Why do you do this for us?" she whispered, her voice breaking. His eyes met hers, steady even in pain. "Because you asked," he said, just as he had before. But then his gaze shifted to the older sister, still weak and bound by fading marks of the runes. And because she was taken for a reason. The younger girl's breath caught. "What do you mean?" The human's jaw tightened. "Chains. Like those are not for prisoners. They are for offerings." The cave seemed colder at his words. The little alien's heart pounded. She looked at her sister, who stirred faintly, her lips parting as if to speak. Finally, her voice cracked through the silence, weak but clear. "They wanted me for the cliffs." The younger sister's eyes widened. "The cliffs?" The older nodded slowly, her head trembling. "There is something in the stone, something they worship. They bring sacrifices to feed it. I was meant to be next." Her voice broke into sobs, and the younger girl wrapped her arms around her tightly. "No," she whispered fiercely. "Not while he is here." The human's gaze darkened. He listened, every word shaping the weight of his decision. He stood, leaning on his weapon, his figure tall against the cave wall. If they were willing to send so many for her, then she is not the last they will take. His words carried no emotion, only truth. The little alien's chest clenched. "You mean they will come for others?" He nodded once. "Unless we stop them." His hand tightened on the staff. "Unless I stop them." His voice was low, heavy, but certain. The younger sister's eyes widened. "You can't go alone," she whispered. Her voice trembled with fear, but also with something new resolve. She looked at her sister, fragile but alive, then back at him. "If they want her, they will want me too. I can help." Her words were brave, but her small hands shook as she said them. The human turned his eyes on her, his gaze steady, piercing. For a moment, silence filled the cave. Finally he spoke. "Strength is not in offering yourself. It is in refusing to break." He looked away, his voice softer now. "And you have already proven you will not break." The girl's chest swelled, her tears falling fresh. She wanted to argue, but his words sank deep into her heart. She pressed her face into her sister's shoulder, holding her close. The human turned to the cave's entrance, his silhouette framed by the silver moonlight. Outside, the forest echoed with the distant sound of horns. They were coming, and they would not stop. The younger sister closed her eyes, whispering into the night, "Please, mighty human, save us all." And though he did not answer, the way he lifted his weapon was answer enough. The horns drew closer, their calls echoing through the cliffs. The little alien girl held her sister tightly, her small body trembling with fear. The cave walls felt too thin, too weak to hide them from what was coming. Her sister's breath was shallow, her strength barely returning after the chains had been broken. Yet the girl's eyes never left the human, who stood tall at the cave's mouth. His figure was steady, his staff gripped in his scarred hands, his gaze fixed on the night beyond. He had bled, he had fought, and still he had not fallen. To her, he no longer looked only human. He looked like something greater. The first shadows appeared. Raiders poured into the valley below, their torches burning like rivers of fire. The ground shook with their march. The little alien girl's stomach twisted. There were too many. No man could stand against so many. She wanted to call out, to beg him to stay hidden. But the human stepped forward into the moonlight, his silhouette sharp against the silver glow. His voice carried across the valley, steady as stone. "You came for sacrifice. Tonight you will find only death." The raiders roared in answer, their blades raised. They rushed up the cliffs, climbing fast, their armor clattering. The human did not wait. He leapt down from the rocks, his staff spinning in his hands. The clash was immediate, a storm of steel and fire. The little alien cried out, watching him vanish into the wave of enemies. Sparks burst, the sound of breaking metal filled the air. But through the chaos, his figure never faltered. Every strike shattered armor. Every movement tore through another foe. He fought like one against an army, and the army trembled. Yet the raiders were not endless by themselves. Something else stirred in the cliffs. The ground split, cracks glowing. With the same runes that had bound her sister. A roar thundered from deep within the stone, shaking the sky. The little alien girl's eyes widened in horror. From the cliffs themselves, a monstrous figure rose, born of rock and fire. Its body towered high, its eyes burning like suns. This was what they had meant to feed, the creature the raiders worshipped. Her sister clung weakly to her, whispering through trembling lips, It was waiting for me." The human turned as the beast emerged. His chest rose with heavy breaths, his blood running down his arms, but his eyes narrowed with calm. He had faced men. Now he would face a god of stone. The raiders fell to their knees, chanting in their broken tongue, their voices rising in worship. The little alien's heart pounded. This was not a fight any mortal could win. She screamed from the cave, her voice cracking with desperation. "You can't fight that. Please, you'll die." But the human did not look back. He raised his staff, his voice cutting through the chants. "Then let me die standing." His words carried with such force that even the raiders faltered. He charged forward, his body small against the massive form of the beast. The ground shook as its hand of stone came crashing down. The human rolled aside, his staff slamming against the glowing cracks in its body. Sparks burst, the beast roaring. In pain, again and again he struck, each blow breaking its runes, each strike tearing its strength apart. The little alien watched, her tears falling. She had never seen defiance burn so bright. The beast roared, its claws raking across the earth. The human was thrown back, his body slamming against the stone. Blood spilled from his lips, his body trembling. Still, he forced himself to rise, planting his staff in the ground to hold steady. The little alien's heart shattered. He was only one man. He could not yet. As she watched, she realized something. He was not fighting only for them. He was fighting for every life the beast would take, for every voice that would have been silenced. He stood because no one else could. And that truth made her believe. The human roared, a sound that echoed louder than the beast itself. He surged forward one last time, his weapon glowing with the fire of his will. With a strike that shook the valley, he drove the staff into the beast's core. The runes shattered, light bursting in every direction. The cliff split, the beast's body crumbling into stone and ash. The raiders screamed, their worship turned to horror as their god fell. When the light cleared, silence returned. The human stood alone in the dust, his staff buried in the ground, his chest heaving, his body bloodied but unbroken. The little alien ran to him, her sister leaning weakly against her shoulder. She threw her arms around his waist, her tears soaking his torn cloak. "You did it," she whispered. "You saved her. You saved us." The human looked down at her, his face calm, his eyes soft. He reached out, placing a hand gently on her head. "You asked," he said simply. His voice carried no pride, no demand for thanks, only truth. The sisters clung to him, their hearts overflowing. For them, he had become more than human. He had become hope itself. The dawn rose, its light washing over the cliffs. The beast was gone, the raiders scattered into silence. The sisters stood beside the human, their hands clinging to his arm as if afraid he would vanish. The little alien looked up at him, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Mighty human," she whispered, her voice steady now. "The stories will never forget you." He looked out over the valley, his face unreadable, his weapon resting against his shoulder. He did not answer, he did not need to. His silence, like his strength, spoke louder than any word ever could.